Hey folks, welcome back to a Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Oracle's Civil War.
Oracle's is a self-published title. It plays 2 to 10 players, ages 12 and up, and each game takes between 60 and 180 minutes to play.
Great, well let's gather our forces and battle it out. In Oracle's, 2 teams will set out across this expansive map in order to strengthen their forces. Along the way, they're going to be running into mystery chests. They might run into dragons and sea creatures and explore the dark forest, all in an effort to become strong enough to take out your opponent's tavern.
As Mark said, this is a game for 2 teams, but that doesn't mean you have to have an equal number of players on each team. Each team can have between 1 and 5 players. The key is that each team controls the same number of characters as the other team, and that's one of the things you'll do at the beginning of the game is you'll choose the characters you'll be controlling. Also, each team will designate 1 player to be their oracle. And if you're playing with the augmented reality application, that's the character, or that's the player who will actually control that application to guide the rest of his teammates.
Indeed, and there is AR in this game. Now, it's important to note that the AR is not required to play, but it just adds a whole nother level. So let's take a close look at how the AR works. So, like Randy said, you as the oracle are going to help by being the seer, so to say, and see what's happening out on the board and lead your team through the dangers. And there's different ways you can do this, right? You're going to be giving them up to 3-word commands, saying, oh, you avoid the left, there's a dragon, there's a chest, go check out that chest.
Although each round you're limited to 3 words to each of your teammates.
Right. So it makes it really interesting because it adds a whole other level of dimension to the game, right?
Absolutely.
And if you have, you could even set it up where you have like a separate monitor where everyone can see what's happening. But I kind of like the thematic choice of the oracle or the seer seeing what's happening and kind of leading their team through the dangers that are happening on the board. Now, I got a chance to check this out because Sean, the developer, he came to town and actually showed me how the AR was going to work. And it was really neat. And there's a couple different variations here. It's in different difficulty levels, I believe, that they're going to set for the VR for the game here. And what's interesting is that you don't have to use the VR as well. You can play this as a standard tactical battle game. But the neat thing is that they've also included ways to just do card battles where you have just the creatures battling it back and forth, or dragons, and you even can combine characters where they can jump on the dragon and attack the other player. There's some really neat things in the work here, and I'm really excited to see where this AR goes. And I think it's going to add a lot of layers and dimension to this game. So that's a look at the AR, but you don't need the AR to play this game.
Right.
At its core, it is a battle strategic game, and along the way you're going to be enhancing your characters and going into battle. So let's take a closer look at some of the setup and maybe a battle or two and what the treasure cards can do for you.
When you begin setup, each team will choose the characters. Now, each team has the same 10 characters to choose from, and the character cards show your default strength over here on the left by the stars, your default health here by the hearts, your default movement distance here in the center, your default movement type on the back, whether it's just orthogonal, orthogonal and diagonal, or what they call freestyle, where you can actually move in any direction. And lastly, this text here shows the special power. Each character has some unique special powers, and that probably makes a difference in the team you choose.
Yeah.
So there may be some characters with nice affinities, nice synergies in their skills.
And that's part of the neat thing about this game is discovering those synergies and what the best combo for the teams are. It really is neat.
Right, not just the synergies amongst your team, but you might find that you have strengths or weaknesses against certain other characters on the other team. So you might say, well, he's got that one. I'm going to need these 2 characters to go against that guy. So once you've chosen your character cards, you will choose your character miniatures, and you will place them against the edge of the board, these green squares right up against the edge of the board. You'll also choose your tavern. Now, in this realm, taverns are the seat of power, and maybe that's where most decisions get made in our government too, in bars instead of the Capitol or the White House. But this is the thing you're trying to protect, because if the enemy is able to beat down all the shields and occupy this tavern, they win the game. That's one of the 3 win conditions. So you'll place this also against the edge of the board. Now after you've done that, that's your team, that's your setup. The next thing you'll do is you'll set up these individual chests, and there are 16 that will go in the Valley of Destiny and also 16 that go into the Dark Forest. you have these, we'll call them NPCs.
Yes.
And they're also called superpowers. And you've got Augustus, the wise man, as well as Immortus, this kind of dark soul.
Yeah.
And each of these characters have their own guardian dragon. So right now they start off not controlled by anyone, but if your team is able to defeat their guardian dragon, you will be able to bring that dragon and that character into your team. So then it creates a nice imbalance there.
It does, yeah.
And the last thing I want to mention is the map itself. The map itself has all these different grids and designs here. You can move on any of these squares with lines around the edge of the square. So that's great. Keep that in mind. You've got bridges to go from section to section. There are some squares with dotted lines, and those can be passed through by the jumper. There's a character called the jumper, as well as anybody with freestyle movement. But they can only move through them. They can't land on them. And then there are squares like you see here in the mountains of the Valley of Destiny. These mountain squares don't have any edge on them at all. Not dotted line, no lines around the edge at all. And those can't even be passed through by jumpers or freestyle people. So as you're moving, as you're even positioning your characters, you might keep that in mind to say, hey, here's a bridge I want to go across immediately, so I'm going to position my guys there so they don't have to go around the mountain or spend time going around the mountain.
Right, exactly. Now, one of the big things you're going to be doing throughout the game is hitting these chests, because they're going to give your characters better abilities, better powers, all kinds of different things. And there's 4 different types of cards that you might pull from. And they have varying risk versus reward abilities in them, right? Which is pretty neat. But let's take a look at asset cards first, because these are 100% good pretty much all the time. And some are like one-time use and so forth. But a couple examples here is that you're going to get additional tavern shields to add to your tavern, and it's going to bump up your level. Of course, you can never go beyond your maximum level on a card. And you even can find potions to increase your strength. So these asset cards are really your safe bet when you're going after chests.
Now, asset cards have a low risk, but also smaller rewards. And they're very good at the beginning of the game, but they're not necessarily going to give you the power you need to be victorious against some of these monsters you'll be fighting, as well as against the other team. If you want to take a little bit more of a risk and get a little bit more of a reward, there are these mystery cards. And these mystery cards, there's a 70% chance you're going to get something good, but 30% chance you might not. So let's take a look at some of these.
Some badness.
Here's a freestyle heart. And freestyle hearts, some hearts when you get them, they boost your health. And you can't give them away unless you've reached your maximum health. And sometimes you can only send a heart to someone else through the messenger. Now, so the messenger is a character that you can choose whether or not you have on your team, and they're very useful for transferring assets between characters.
They're great for that, actually.
When we talk about freestyle elements like hearts can be transferred without the help of a messenger. So one of the cards you might draw as a mystery card is getting this freestyle heart, and it's like, hey, there's somebody else who needs a heart. I can do that right away. Another good one is a dragon egg, and dragon eggs, if you collect 3 of them, make you the dragon master, and you can bypass dragons in the game, which can be very useful because dragons are big, monstrous creatures.
Indeed. That's definitely something I went after. It was the dragon eggs. That's awesome. I love that aspect.
Seeing as how Game of Thrones is starting its final season, there's motivation to do that as well. Yes. Another one, and this is unique to the mystery card deck, I believe, which is the sub-journeys. Now, there are several places you can go on the map if you get these sub-journey cards, which will give you additional benefits, potentially additional powers. And this one starts your lake journey. So that's another reason you might go after these mystery cards, is even though there's a chance of getting something bad, starting these journeys, although these sub-journeys might seem a bit of a distraction, they might ultimately help you be victorious in defeating the opponent's tavern.
That's definitely what we found. The sub-journeys actually add a lot of flavor to the game.
They do. It gives you very thematic. And then lastly, I mentioned that there is a 30% chance of getting something bad. And here's an example. You might lose 1 star. And when you lose a star, that means you lose a strength point, and that means you can roll fewer dice when you come into battle. And we'll talk about battle in just a few moments.
And now we have the Destiny cards. And boy, there's only 40% good in this deck. And as an example, you're going to get 5 tavern shields, which is really good,
That's
right?
a high reward.
It's a high reward. However, there is also lose 4 tavern shields as a companion card in this deck. It hurts a lot, right? And then there's things that get even worse for your characters. You can lose lives. This one particularly, you've been poisoned, you lose 2 lives. So this Destiny deck is full of bad, but it also has super high, awesome cards, like 5 shields added to your tavern, which is really good. So you gotta balance that.
Yeah, it depends on how much you feel like gambling, and some of
it's gambling. I love it.
Some characters may be more buffed so that they can endure. It's like, if I lose 2 hearts, I've already got 8 hearts. It's not going to kill me or anything like that. But for characters that are weaker and a little bit prone to death, we'll say, this might not be something you want to pursue.
Indeed, and I love how the backs of these cards, you're like, ooh, do I really want to grab that card?
Oh yeah, that's a nice little skull face there.
Right?
The final type of chest card is called a battle card. Now, it's important to remember that in this game, the only way to get a permanent additional star, i.e. another strength point, is by doing battle. And when you do battle, whoever was victorious in the battle, all players who were victorious get an additional strength point, an additional star, and all players who were defeated lose one of their hearts. Now, this fourth type of chest card is called a battle card, and there is a 60% chance that you will get a creature to fight that's either 1 or 2 stars, and there's a 40% chance that you'll get one that's 3 stars large. Now, depending upon how strong your character is, you might find this gamble worth taking.
Absolutely.
But because this is a one-time thing, you have to fight for your life, and your whole goal there is to defeat that creature and get additional stars. Once your character or characters have become strong enough, this might be a way of just kind of, I wouldn't say grinding, but just looking for these chests, trying to get more battle cards, and defeating these creatures that become increasingly easy to beat as you become stronger.
All right, so we're going to talk about combat next. It's very straightforward, really, and Randy is the combat master.
I wouldn't say that, but I'll give you an overview of how combat works. Now, it's important to remember that in most cases, when you do combat, you don't get to move after you do battle.
This is right.
So there are some cases when there are exceptions to that rule. But this is true for both combat as well as opening a chest. So get most of your movement done out of the way up front.
Be up front.
Yeah, and unless you have these special provisions that let you do any movement afterwards, you're going to be finishing your turn after you've opened the chest or performed battle. Now, in battle, the attacker gets to decide whether he's doing a one-on-one battle or a group battle. The group battle, excuse me, the group battle is one of these things that can go back and forth. I might say, well, we're doing a group battle and I want to just engage you 2 guys. But if the opposing team has people that are within range, they can say, yeah, no, they're 2 guys that you're attacking, but there's 2 other guys that actually want to get in on the fray as well. And well, if you're going to have 4 guys, I'm going to have 7 guys.
That's right.
And it can go back and forth.
But that's where the team aspect comes into play really nicely. Because when you're just one-on-one, you're like, oh, I guess I'll put all my guys in. But when you have the team aspect, you have everybody chiming in. Oh, I'm in on this battle. You know?
That's right. And you might actually be leveraging safety in numbers. We'll say that whole concept. You might say, well, I really want to go over here, but I want to make certain my teammate is protected. So you might keep certain people in groups. In any case, once you've decided whether it's a one-on-one battle or a group battle, and all players have decided who's going to engage in the battle, each team rolls a number of dice equal to the number of strength points or stars on all the characters engaged in battle.
Which could potentially be a lot of dice.
It could be quite a few dice, and that's why there's quite a few dice provided with the game. So the teams both roll their dice, they add up the total number of pips on the dice, and whoever has the highest number is the victor. And all players who are on the victorious side get to have another strength point, and all players who are on the defeated side lose a heart. Now, if you get down to 0, your character can die, but there are cases where your character can resurrect if they do things before the end of the round. So that you may have an asset that gives you the ability to resurrect. You may have something that gives you an additional heart. Somebody might be able to transfer a heart to you. And I think there's a one-time provision of the game where the healer can resurrect somebody from a distance. And that's if you have the healer on your team. Now, you might have said,
I don't need a healer.
Yeah, this time, who cares? I'm just going to have all fighting guys. And then you might regret that later. So there are conditions that let you resurrect one of your characters. But even if he is resurrected, all of his assets, whether he's resurrected or just dies, all the assets are forfeited at that point.
Absolutely.
The victor can take all the assets, but he can only keep a total of 3. So they transfer to him, but he may have to drop some. Also, if you have the messenger in play, the messenger can transfer assets to other players. So there are nice elements there that let you, it's not just a matter of getting strength points, but you might say, hey, that guy's got dragon eggs, so I'm going after those. So there are benefits, and this is really the the heart of the game
Yeah, it is.
because this is something you're going to engage in as you're trying to attack the opponent's tavern.
Indeed, and it's really streamlined. I mean, it's really that straightforward.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of complex grids and battle grids.
Right.
You're just rolling dice, and I love dice checkers.
That's right, you do.
All right, so as Randy said earlier, there are 3 ways to win this game. The obvious one, the big one, is to take out your opponent's tavern, reducing its shields to 0 and occupying it. That's the #1 way to win.
That's right. And in addition to, Mark showed an example of one of the asset cards being able to strengthen or add a number of shields to your taverns. Another way of strengthening your tavern is increasing the number of strength in each of your characters. So if half of your characters have their maximum strength, it adds 5 shields to your tavern's strength.
Which is awesome.
If all of your characters have their maximum strength, it adds 12, or it moves the tavern strength up to 12 immediately.
Yeah.
So there are ways to defend your tavern, not just by being there to fight, but also by developing your characters.
Which is really cool. And then if you decide to end the game early, you're like, okay, we're done playing. It's been like 3 hours.
You can say the pizza's here, so yeah.
You can just calculate stars on either side, cumulative, the total amount of stars that you have versus your opponent, and whoever has the most stars is going to win.
That's right.
And also, if one of the oracles on either side decides, you know what, I'm done, I forfeit, you can also do that.
Now, it's only the oracle that can choose to forfeit. So if his teammates are going, man, it's 4 a.m., please, we got to stop playing, the oracle says, nope, we got to keep going. Indeed. The game must continue.
All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, you know, things are in development still for the AR, and you really should check that out, take a closer look. I'm excited to see where that goes and how much more involved it gets with the game. And just the different aspects and different difficulty levels that it might impose, I think are going to add a lot of neat strategic things to the game that, you know, others don't particularly have.
That's true. That's true. It is a very unique game in that respect. We also didn't mention the fact that every 3 rounds there's an opportunity for each side to negotiate trades of assets. So you might say, I've got the 4th dragon egg and I really don't need it, but you've got something I want. So that's also an interesting negotiation aspect of the game.
So, but folks, ultimately, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support.
That's right.
So I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.